Hey, Bruce here. Today's episode we're going to be doing a beginner's crash course on coral propagation. In today's exciting episode, I'm going to show you how you can make your own amazing frags just like the ones you see here at Rusty's Reefs in Bountiful, Utah. Things in the hobby for me and many other people. So let's just kind of get right into it. So you're saying what is a frag? Well, it's a kind of short for fragmentation. It's a when you're cutting a piece of a coral to propagate it. So in the wild, corals will propagate by budding. They can propagate by fragmentation, or they can propagate through spawning. We don't really see spawning in our aquariums, but we do see budding, and that's where, for example, we've got mushroom corals or zoanthids. They'll form new heads and start spreading along the rocks. And fragmentation is where we're forcibly taking a piece of that coral, we're cutting it, and we're starting a whole new colony. So this happens in the wild through various circumstances, and we can also replicate that in our aquarium. The purpose of that obviously is to make more coral. We want to share these with our friends. Some people make a living out of this. They'll actually, they call them coral farmers, and it's really a lot of fun to do this. I've had a number of different propagation systems, and it's something I've enjoyed thoroughly. So I'm hoping to share this with everybody, share some of the different techniques I've used to propagate coral. So let's dive into this. I might be a little bit all over the place, but I want to show you a few different examples of how this is done. I wanted to point out a few of the tools that we're going to be using today. We're going to want some Frag Plugs or rubble rock. This super glue right here, this is the brand that I actually like quite a bit. You can get it at the dollar store. It's very inexpensive. It comes in smaller tubes, so it doesn't, eventually the tubes will clog up on you. By the time you're done with this, you don't have to worry about it. Also, it's a really good consistency. These are my favorite cutters right here. These work great if you can find these at one of your local fish stores. Dremel is really handy to have. I've got a diamond bit on there, and then we've also got this multi-purpose cutting wheel right here. A little bit more of heavy-duty cutters. Occasionally these come in handy. A scalpel. This is great on soft coral. And then, of course, we're going to want to have some eye protection and some gloves. I always want to do safety first. This is very important. Before we get started on anything, I want to mention when we're doing this, you want to wear safety glasses and have some gloves. Some corals are poisonous. Polyphoas in particular, palytoxin is no joke. You want to be, I've been poisoned by it a few times myself. It's terrible, and it can be completely avoided. When you're cutting corals, avoid any kind of contact with your face. Make sure that you're well protected, and keep a clean work area. Make sure to clean all your tools. Keep these things away from children and pets. I can't stress that enough. Just be safe. If you just use a little bit of common sense, it's not a big deal. But just really keep that in mind, that you are dealing with something that is potentially dangerous. You may want to do a little bit more research on which corals are toxic, on palytoxin, just to be safe. Typically, most of your corals that you're going to be dealing with are not dangerous, but it's still best to be safe. This is something really important to point out. Or can we frag any coral we want to? Well, that's kind of debatable. The corals we're talking about in this video and the techniques I'm using, yes. Something like this, you can clearly see that we've got 3 separate heads here. This is kind of a good coral to examine, a good example here because this one is dead, so you can see the skeleton there. Where you've got a coral like this, and each one of these polyps has a separate mouth, we do not want to frag these individual heads. Like you wouldn't want to cut this in half. You're going to have a really hard time getting that to grow. Most likely it's not going to make it. So something like this, we could cut down on the skeleton part and separate that single head. We want to keep the skeleton intact. For example, let's say it's a single head of a mushroom coral, a single head of a zoanthid or a polythoa. You don't want to just take that zoanthid and cut it in half. You want to let those propagate on their own and then maybe cut the rock that they're on. I have successfully cut into some of the mushroom corals, cut them up into a couple pieces and had them grow out, but I don't really recommend that. We're kind of dealing with this being more geared towards beginner. So if it's one single head of something, don't try to propagate that until you've done a little bit more research. Here's some green star polyps. A lot of soft corals you could use a scalpel on. This one right here I believe came from Boston Aqua Farms. They're available, a lot of your local fish stores should have these, or you should be able to order them online. A simple, nice, swift cut. The green star polyps can actually be glued to a rock. A lot of soft corals cannot. This one will attach just fine. I'll show you that in a minute. Alright, we have this Montipora Cap right here. These are easy enough to frag a number of different ways. I prefer using the saw myself just because it's the easiest and most precise. Dremel is going to work really well. I usually like to kind of cut from the back. We want to have this out of the water for the least amount of time as possible. The other consideration is when you're cutting, that can generate some heat, and so kind of keep an eye out if you're using a really dull blade and it's taken a while to cut. That heat could start damaging the coral quite quickly, and you could end up killing it. Alright, I'm going to show you how easy it is to cut this on the bandsaw. Bandsaw cuts through it just like butter. You can make the frags any shape you'd like. And here again, obviously, this blade I'm using is fairly new, so it's cutting really well. Over time, the blades will dull and need to be replaced. I'm mentioning this because I just want to emphasize that you don't want the frags to get too hot. You don't want your corals to get too hot. That can result in tissue damage. So on this candy cane coral right here, I can demonstrate a few different techniques. First off, the skeleton portion of the coral here is fairly brittle. So one thing you can do is you can use your cutters to cut that. The downside is that you may end up doing a little bit of damage. It's a little unpredictable. So that turned out perfect. So we could just glue that down onto a frag plug, a rock, whatever we need to. That piece turned out perfect. The other way we can frag this candy cane coral right here is with our Dremel. And this is a lot more precise. So you can see that right there. And that leaves a nice nice flat cut that can be glued down onto a frag plug or a rock. Alright, now I'm going to cut this this rock here with this polythoa, and as I mentioned before, the polythoas, you want to be very careful. They're toxic. Wear your eye protection, wear gloves, and don't touch your face. Just be very mindful of what you're doing and you should be fine. The bandsaw works great for things like this. You've got a big rock here. We'll cut that right off. And you can see how thick that rock was, and it wasn't that much effort really to get that piece cut there. Now, if you don't happen to have a diamond bandsaw, another option is you can get a diamond wheel for your Dremel. I think I paid about $20 for the attachment. Make sure that your rock is nice and wet. You don't want this to get too hot. You'll end up burning up your bit. And then we can finish the rest of that off. You've got a little bit of polyp attached there. We can just cut that with our scalpel, and we've got two pieces. All right, here's a few examples of some of the frag plugs that I was talking about. These are the most typical ones. They just have this bottom piece here that will fit right into a frag rack, like this here. Another thing that I'll do too is if I have a spare piece of rock or a skeleton like this, this has got a nice flat bottom. Something like this would be perfect to glue some zoanthids, green star polyps, something like that that's going to encrust over this. So you can get kind of creative with your coral placement and make things a little bit more unique. Get different types of growth patterns out of your corals. Any types of small flat rubble rock works really well. If you do have a diamond saw, then you can take some of your rubble rock and cut the bottoms flat so it'll sit on your sand bed or somewhere else in your aquarium. Right here I'm going to glue some of this this green star polyp too. And put that under water, let the glue kind of set up on there, and you're good to go. We'll see how this looks in a couple weeks. Alright, here are the some of the corals that we've cut today so far. They're already on the frag rack. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the tank in just a minute. I wanted to point out another thing too. While if you're into fragging, then you want to let these heal for a number of weeks before you place them in another aquarium. So if you're planning on selling them to a friend or trading or whatever, it's really beneficial to let them heal in the same aquarium that they came from. There's a lot higher chance of survival. As always, I hope you've gotten some benefit from this. This was more geared towards beginners, and it's also kind of a crash course, so we're a little all over the place. I'd really appreciate some feedback. Let me know if there's something that you want to hear more about. Any constructive criticism or anything, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I definitely appreciate your support. If you could hit that subscribe button, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Also, I'm available on Instagram if you want to follow me. That's vital_reef. Again, thank you so much.